Hey guys, welcome to the 2026 GTO AA convention out here in beautiful Loveland, Colorado. We're surrounded by beautiful scenery and beautiful Pontiacs. And I've got one of those beautiful Pontiacs owner right here. This is Mr. Clay Hackney, and he's got a 1965 GTO he named Destiny. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about this car, how you came about it, and why we named it Destiny?
Okay. I'll try to be brief. It goes back a long ways. I purchased the car originally in 1996, and at that time I was the third owner. Purchased it from a guy that did the majority of the restoration on it, and he did that in late 80s. When I got it in 96, it had 137,000 and a few odd miles. Kept it a few years. I tell people life happened, 2 kids, and college, and all of that. So reluctantly sold it, and sold it to a friend, lived in Tennessee, who did not title it in his name. And he kept it for quite a few years. He just put it in one of his buildings and stored it. He may have driven it, I don't know, 10, 15 miles, but not many. And then sold it to a fellow friend in Tennessee. And he was kind of a dealer collector ish. And he sold it almost immediately. And that was, so my friend sold it in 15. When he sold it, the guy took it to the Kissimmee, Florida auction in 2016. So it sold in Kissimmee in 2016 and went to a dealer in Ohio. The Ohio guy kept it for several years. He then, he and his partner sold it, and it went to a collector in Kentucky. I began tracking the car a little bit as best I could on the internet, and kind of lost track after Kissimmee. But anyway, got friends of friends, and so I tried to track it down and just keep up with it.
Yeah, all men on deck. We're looking for it.
That's it.
That's
yeah,
right.
yeah. If I met somebody that I think may have some information, I ask about it.
Yeah.
So anyway, the guy in Ohio, fortunately, was still in business. I don't know, 5 years ago when I reached out to try to find the car. And he told me that he and his partner had split up. They he still owned part ownership. The guy that took over the business basically didn't do much in the business itself. And when I got in touch with the owner of the business originally, he said, well, my buddy who took over the business said that he destroyed all of the documents that he had when he went out of business. And I said, so any chance that he would have kept any records? He said, nope. Matter of fact, I'm looking for a lady who called me last week. She's trying to track down a car that we owned. And I reached out to him, and he told me there's nothing left. So he said, however, yeah, it doesn't help my cause, or didn't.
Yeah.
And I said, so I guess I'm just out of luck. I appreciate your time. And he said, well, all I know about the car is that when it was sold to a collector in Kentucky. I said, okay, well, all right. I have friends of friends, and well, I'll try to find out. I said, you wouldn't happen to know the guy's name? He said, nope. He said, but I do know that the owner passed away, and that the car was then sold at auction, but he didn't know which auction, and he didn't know when.
Okay.
So I said, all right, well, so kind of fast forward several years ago, I'm coming in from working in the yard. I'm flipping channels, taking a break, and all of a sudden I get this just 1 second clip on television of a white GTO, black top, blue interior. And it was one of those recap segments on Barrett Jackson that said, this is what crossed the block. And so I'm thinking, what are the odds? And my search began in earnest again. So spent a lot of time on the internet. Ended up being able to find that the car was registered in Nevada. So exhausted all my efforts on the internet, calling people that I think may have friends in Nevada or whatever. And uh, ran out of luck there and ended up calling, I was desperate, uh, calling 4 private detectives in Nevada, telling them what I needed. And,
Yep.
you know, out of the 4, 2 called me back. The one that actually followed up on it called me back the next day and said, "Hey, tell me what you got." So I explained to him, told him I could prove I'm not a stalker. I'm not trying to steal the car. I had to convince him first off because, you know, and I said, here's the information that I've got on the car. I was a third owner. And I said, here's the history. And I gave him the whole history. And part of the history that I gave him was that when I purchased the car from the second owner, I had the phone number and name of the original owner. So the original owner bought it, and he still had the second owner still had the phone number. I actually spoke with the original owner, and when I introduced myself to him, man, he just lit up. He said, "You've got my old car," and he said, "I love that car so much." He said, "You mean Paul sold that?" And I said, "Yes, sir. I'm the proud owner of it." And he said, "I told Paul if you ever sold it, he's got to find somebody that's going to love it and appreciate it for what it is and not rag it out. Don't sell it to some kid who's going to do nothing but just tear it up and wreck it." And I said, "Well, I promise you it's going to a good home." And so he just began to give me the whole story. His son-in-law worked at a dealership in Spur, Texas. He said, I ordered it through him. I flew into Texas, drove it home. I was in the Air Force, so I was in between being stationed. So I had to register it temporarily in Tennessee. And I had, when I bought it the first time in 96, and that's part of the paperwork that I've got. I sent my paperwork with the guy that I sold it to,
Right.
and it was passed on. I met a guy in Tennessee DMV records, and he said, "Send me the information that you're looking for," because I was trying to trace the history, the title, and all of that. So my letter to him turned up the original title from Rickles Chevrolet in Spur to F.W. Hyde, Colonel F.W. Hyde in the Air Force. And from him to the second owner, a guy named Paul, who's a district attorney in Phoenix, Arizona. And after that, it was to me, he actually sent where I had tried to title it. So anyway, when I'm telling this private detective the whole story, that I've got documents, I've got VINs, I've got dates, I'd be happy to send him everything. I'm trying to convince him that I'm legitimate, that I'm not nefarious, up to something nefarious. And he said, "Well, I tell you what, I'm a car guy." He said, "Used to live in California. I was president of AACA out there for a number of years. I love old cars. I've had a couple, but me and my wife decided to move to Nevada." He says, I'll take a look at it." I sent him all the information I had. So he says, "It's going to take me a couple of days. Be patient with me." I said, "Look, this is on your timetable, not mine. This is it." So a couple of days later, I was skeptical I'd ever hear from him. But sure enough, he calls me back and said, "Hey, this is Ralph and Robert." And he says, "How many people did you call before getting me?" And I said, "You mean how many private detectives? How many private detectives did you call before getting me?" And I said, "Actually, 4. How many responded?" I said, 2. The other guy told me to call me back, but to my knowledge, he's never called. He said, "I would bet you a steak dinner anywhere in the world that nobody would have been able to turn up the information that I've been able to find." I said, "You found it?" He said, No, I haven't found it." He said, "I've got information on the car. And so here's the deal. I've still got some more information to dig, but I found records where the car was registered to an owner in California. I also have a registration to a guy that lives in Washington State." And he said, "So how did you know that it was registered in Nevada?" And I said, "Well, I did some homework," and I told him what I did. And he said, "All right, well, you're correct. It is registered in Nevada. But I've driven by the place. I've lived here for years." And he said, Had some friends. I was a police officer before I became a private detective, and I still got friends that are serving as officers. He said, I've called people, I've looked into the building. There's not a car. There's no way that car is at the address that this is registered to. And I said, okay. I said, so I'm out of luck. He said, no, not exactly. He said, I've called in some favors at the DMV. And the reason that I asked you how many people, and I told you that I don't think anybody else would have been able to help you, because the information leads to 2 other states in addition to Nevada. He said, I can only pull information from the states that I'm actually registered in: Nevada, California, and Washington State. And I said, oh, okay, well, good luck. Well, I guess I'm glad I got you.
Yeah.
And he says, I'm going to have to do some more digging because I don't have it all figured out. So he says, you got to be more patient. I said, again, your time frame, not mine. So 2 or 3 days later, he calls me back and he says, okay, so here's what I've got. He said, I'm going to send you more information than you ever wanted to know about this history, about the owners, all of the information that I've been able to pull up on because it all comes. It's relatives and history and all of this. So I said, okay, so you do or do not know where it is? And he said, I can't guarantee you the guy that I've got the name of is the guy that still has the car. He could have sold it. He may not have ever have owned it. These things really take a wide range of possibilities. He said, I do have a phone number. He said, should be a good phone number because he's only had it for 6 months. And so I said, all right, well, send it to me. And he said, all right, well, you got questions? Call me back. So I had a name, I had a phone number. Now I'm thinking, what am I going to do? You just don't call up somebody and start talking about a car.
I want to buy your car.
That's it. And so I sent him a text and said, hey, you may or may not have owned this car. I was the third owner, and I gave him a little background knowledge so that he would know that it was me.
You, yeah.
And that I had previously owned it. And he said, immediately, give me 15 minutes and call me. So 15 minutes later, I'm on the phone with him. We talked for probably an hour, hour and a half. And then he just blurted out, well, if you're wondering if I'm selling it or if I would sell the car, I would. Now I'm speechless.
Ding, ding, ding.
Now I'm speechless, And so he says, by the way, how'd you get my number? And I said, it's a really long story. It goes back to Nevada. I tracked the registration to Nevada. I have friends in Nevada. And I said, I don't know how to explain it all, and he said, well, it's really odd that you reached out, the fact that we're even talking. He said, because it was only last week that I decided to sell the car, but I hadn't advertised it. I hadn't told anybody. And now here you are calling, asking about it. And I said, well, there's no way that I can tell you that I can afford the car. I have no idea, even if you're willing to sell it, if I can afford it. So I said, tell me about the car. How, what all have you done? Anything? And he said, it's been in climate controlled storage for the 5 years that I've had it. And he said, but I've put all of about 10 miles on it. I said, really? I'm thinking he's pulling my leg.
Yeah.
And he said, no, literally, that's it. He said, I bought 2 cars, one Bronco and one GTO. This car that we're talking about at Barrett Jackson. And I said, so that was in 2020. Yes. And I said, well, part of my research says that the car is actually titled in Nevada. He said, it's funny you brought that up because that was the height of COVID. I got registration for it after I got the car, no problem. But when I went to re-register it, I was told the DMV had issues with the title. It wasn't a clear title. And I said, so, okay, so what's going on? And he says, I don't know exactly. I'm still trying to figure it out. I said, okay, well, obviously, if you can't get a clear title of a car, I don't know.
Yeah.
That doesn't bode well for me. And he said, well, I think it's okay. I just got more digging to do. And so he said, all right, let's do this. Let's talk in a week. We talked in the next week. He said, well, I think I found out what's going on. Woodside Credit is the company that handled all of the transactions at Barrett.
Mm-hmm.
At the height of COVID, they just decided they were going to register the car in Nevada in my name, but they didn't tell me that it was only going to be registered in Nevada. And the reason they did that is because they had no clue. All of the DMVs across the country, for the most part, were just shut down. So if they couldn't move information and request a title, then they just decided to leave it there in Nevada and put it, and work out the details later. I said, that sounds like a pretty bad way to do business. Knowing Barrett Jackson, you would think they'd want clear cut paperwork, particularly on collector cars. And he said, well, yeah, it's not all done yet. I got to figure out what has to be done. My efforts to contact Nevada DMV have been met with spotty resistance, and I don't have a actual plan for somebody in Nevada to do something so Washington State can actually clear the title. And I have to have that in order for, he had financed a little bit, in order for Woodside Credit to clear the title and actually have a title sent to him in his name. So anyway, all of those things, long story made somewhat short, it ended up, I told him I had to fly out, look at the car, drive it. It's pretty much the way it is. That phone call was in October of 24. I took delivery of the car in March of this year. Okay. So that's how long I've had it.
And it's just a beautiful color combination.
Yeah, it's different. And when I saw the ad, in 96, I thought black top, blue interior. Okay, not sure. Yeah. Until I went out and looked at it.
So what's your favorite part of this car?
It has to be the history.
Just the history,
and it's got 34 factory options on it, which is really kind of different, I guess. Yeah. It's got some of the high performance, obviously the 389 tri-power, the TI ignition. It's got the Kelsey Hayes aluminum drums and Kelsey Hayes rear drums, which when I got it in March, one of the first things I did was to verify that the drums were still the same thing. I figured potentially somebody could have, you turn the drums but they're
still there.
They're the original drums. Hadn't been turned to death. They still work. Trying to think of some of the other rare options. It's got lamp package, hood, interior, glove box, trunk lid. I don't know if I could go through all of them, but those are some of the more. The fact that it's tri-power, 4-speed, air-conditioned car is kind of rare.
Are you ever going to sell it again?
I don't think so.
There you go.
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so. I've got it back. I think this. Yeah.
So from
the wife back here.
Yeah. She would be the one.
So from start to finish, from the day you found out you wanted to buy the car back, to the day you took possession, about how long did that take?
Oh, good grief! I tried to keep up with it after it sold at Mecum, Kissimmee.
Yeah.
And
the early 2000s.
That was in 2016.
16. Okay.
Yeah. So
about 10 years.
I continued to try to keep track of it, and to some varying degree, I get a lead that somebody in Ohio. So the paperwork that I kept on the car, duplicates, helped me track back through some of the ownerships, and then just some research online and phone calls, I was able to gather.
And just another example of, just don't give up. If you want something bad enough, you pull yourself up by your bootstraps and go after it and keep hunting. Don't give up.
That's it.
Because I could see the smile on your face talking about this car. I can see exactly how much it means to you.
Oh, it's very special.
That phone call when he said, "Call me back," and he had it. I bet it was just.
I panicked, to be honest. Yeah. I'm going, what am I going to say to it? You
Has he
know?
called to check on it since you got it?
He has.
Okay.
I took it to the Pontiacs in Pigeon Forge about a month ago,
Okay.
and sent him a picture and said, "Okay, I'm back at it." So we're having fun with it again. So
All right. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to tell us this wonderful story. And
um,
obviously, I don't need to ask where you got the name Destiny, because the whole story wraps it up perfectly.
you can't make up some of the things that happen. That I'm flipping channels. I happen to get a detective that is registered in
In
all
those
three
three states,
states.
yeah. And the guy was thinking
That
about selling it a week before you called him.
before I called,
Yeah, I mean that's
um,
everything lines up.
yeah, and the guy that I actually talked to in Ohio said it's funny because the car that he was trying to find for the lady that had called a week prior,
Mm-hmm.
he said one of the cars that I thought I would definitely get a call back on was your car.
Yeah,
And he said that one's kind of hung in my mind as one that somebody's going to want to know about. So
oh.
yeah,
That's just such a great story. We're glad to see it out here. We're glad you got it back,
yeah,
and hope to see
yeah.
many years.
As long as the good Lord will allow me, I'll be back
All
to
right.
other GTO shows, and I'm glad to share with you guys and everybody else.
That's right. Well, thanks again for the story.
Thank you,
guys. Hey, go find your first car and buy it back. Till then, keep them rolling.
Garage door shuts, engines rest. Next episode, man, it'll be the best.